Welcome to the Sunday morning worship service of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church in Naperville, Illinois. I am Diane Gelder, a member of your Board of Trustees. We are so glad you are here, whether you are present in the sanctuary this morning or watching remotely. It is good to be together. We welcome you to our church and invite you to get to know us better after the service. To keep us all as safe as possible, we ask that you remain masked. Those of us on the chancel will remove our masks to speak from the microphone. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another on our spiritual and religious journeys, while holding ourselves in covenant through our shared 7 principles. The mission of DuPage UU Church is to gather as an inclusive community to grow in character, mind, and spirit, and to transform the world toward fairness, love, and compassion. Whoever you are, wherever you are in life's journey, wherever you are in the world, you are welcome here. We have one morning announcement. Next week, on Wednesday, February 22, marks the beginning of the Christian season of Lent, which begins with Ash Wednesday. Lent is a 40-day contemplative season, which traditionally honors Jesus' 40-day journey in the desert as he sought discernment of God's call. In the spirit of discernment, join Rev. Mandy in this Lenten season by contemplating the ways that oppression, racism, and supremacy harm ourselves and our world, and how we might transform ourselves and the world into a new way of being. This journey will begin this Wednesday, February 22, with a contemplative Ash Wednesday service at 7 p.m. here in the sanctuary. It will begin with weekly email reflections, a Good Friday service in April, and end with our Easter service. And now we have another announcement from Neil Lichtman from the Stewardship Committee.
Thank you, Diane. I am Neil Lichtman, your steward from your stewardship team, and I would like to pause for a moment. All right, good morning. I'm Neil Lichtman from your stewardship team, and I would like to share with you the State of the Promise campaign for our next fiscal year. We're excited to announce that 71 pledge units of our 173 possible pledging units have made their promise. Of the 71 units that have made a promise, 49 have stretched, 16 committed to the same amount, and only 6 have decreased. Putting all those together, including those who pledged the same amount or decreased, altogether we still have a plus 22% over last year's promises by those people. We are so grateful for your commitment and willingness to pledge. Now, we have 9 days remaining in February, and as you know, the Promise campaign is scheduled to conclude at the end of February. The date is important because the stewardship team must inform the Finance Committee of the expected revenues from the campaign so it can build the budget in May that the congregation must approve in June. Please, if you have not made a promise, promise yourself that you will make your campaign promise this week, if you can. Please know that you may also reach out to Reverend Mandy if you need a waiver. And if you need help making your pledge, please see Lindy Spreetsma, who at the end of the service will be seated in the hallway between this sanctuary and Creeves Hall and is ready to help you. Or contact Sherry Brigado in our office during the week. And thank you for your generosity. And I have to, are you going to do it? Okay.
I invite you to turn to someone you did not come with and greet them. If you're online this morning, please type in the chat a good greeting.
I light this chalice today for our seventh Unitarian Universalist principle. We believe in the respect of the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part.
Welcome to this place of love. of communal flourishing. We enter this worship space with open hearts to expand our minds and to see the sacred with each other. Come, let us worship together.
Please rise as you're willing and able, and join me in singing Come and Go With Me, hymn number 1018.
Please join me in reading our covenant. We come together to affirm our relationship with one another, our shared commitment to our Unitarian Universalist principles, and to our DuPage UU Church community. We recognize our agency and our connective power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous in relationship with each other, so that we might transform ourselves and the world.
Good morning. My name is Nell Hasler-Bruce. I use she, her pronouns, and I've been a member of DUUC since 2014. Many of you may have heard my own story coming into Unitarian Universalism. I was born, raised, and dedicated in the UU Church in Geneva, took a pause during my 20s, and came back to the community about 8 years ago, landing in Naperville. And as time goes by, the things that I appreciate most about church, they change. Sunday service, community, religious education for my children, these are all things that I get from DUUC, but when I was asked to talk today, there were two things that I wanted to talk about because they were really present for me in that moment. The first is often easy to overlook or forget just how special it is, but it's something that I noticed immediately about the congregation at DUUC all those years ago, and it hasn't changed, and that's the free and open spirit of welcome. I was reminded of this 2 weeks ago when my family came to witness the dedication of my youngest child. One of my cousins, who is himself a wayward Catholic, observed some things that were pretty strange to him. We had a greeter welcoming him to church and opening the door. We had name tags for visitors. We had coat racks. He said, apparently in Catholic church, you just gotta work it out in the pews. He was really pleasantly surprised to hear us sing a hymn in another language. And the cherry on the cake is he recounted to me that as a parent, he said the final straw in him choosing to stop going to church was all the times an adult would shush his children. And he was pleasantly surprised at the lack of adult disdain at the frequent babblings of our many toddlers. And as he observed all of this, I was kind of surprised at how unusual it is, but I was also proud that this was my congregation. And the second thing I wanted to talk about was how I've really come to believe that my religious education and my ongoing attendance at church is some of the best professional development for the work that I do. I'm a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I also get to bring that work to clients in the spaces of DEI and justice. And there are skills involved with this job that other people really want to develop, and they always ask me how, and I really wish that I could just tell them, go to a UU church. Because justice is a language with which one learns to speak over time, not something you can just take one class on. If you want to expand your cultural framework repertoire, it takes time, and I've been training since I was a kid, whether it's about reproductive, racial, climate, or economic justice. And the language that I hear Rev. Mandy use is some of the most sophisticated I'm hearing right now. A lot of it has to be watered down for corporate America, but I feel like I am in the space that is at the vanguard of transformative justice. I mean, people pay thousands of dollars for DEI training, but this is where I get most of my thoughts in order. And it's because it's infused with the values of the inherent worth and dignity of each human, respect for the web of which we are a part, and the free and responsible search for truth. So I feel lucky to be teaching my children to speak in the language of justice from an early age, and I wish more children had access to this too. I'm sure that if you asked me to do a testimonial in 5 years, the reasons behind my enthusiasm for this congregation will be different, because my religious experience is kind of like a big crystal. It's multifaceted, beautiful from different angles, and formed from a singular journey that cannot be replicated. So I'll keep turning it over and appreciating new things about it, because I cannot live without it.
Our vision of beloved community is rooted in the relationships that we have with one another. Each week we share our joys and concerns. This week I have a dedication for our lovely flowers here from Cindy and Bob Wunderlich, who share that they dedicate the flowers to our coming together to build a better future. I have a sorrow here, thoughts for Jimmy Carter and his family. And from Alan and Tony Morgan, they would like healing thoughts for Alan's mom, Joyce, who fell Saturday night and broke her pelvis and arm. Yes, so much love to all of you as you heal together. And finally, I would like us to extend our thoughts to the students, the faculty, the staff at Michigan State University after the mass shooting this past week. Even when the cares of the world weigh on us, may we find joy in our connections to each other. As we hold each other in our hearts and minds, whether our joys and sorrows were spoken or remain hidden, know that your community is here for you. Please join me in a moment of silence.
It is time to gather, and I would like to invite the children and youth to come forward and join me here in front of the pulpit. So today, I wanted to share a story with you about anger. But all the stories I could find talked about how to stop being angry. And that's not quite where I want to go with this. Because anger seems to have a bad reputation compared to positive emotions, such as happiness or enthusiasm and hope. And perhaps the lack of respect for anger comes from social, cultural, and because it often has destructive outcomes such as aggression and violence. In fact, there's some people that think we would be better off without anger as an emotion. Do you think that would be a good thing to not have anger as an emotion? I'm seeing shaking heads. Yes, Ryan.
I find it possible to get rid of an emotion.
Ryan says it's not even possible to get rid of an emotion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, anger does have valuable qualities and can be beneficial to help the human condition. So, all emotions are beneficial when it comes to experiences, but if it's at a certain ideal level. For example, certain levels of stress and anxiety push us to perform at a high level. Or sadness can be therapeutic, filling us with appreciation for what we've lost while signaling to others we need support to recover and heal. And mild to moderate anger can help us positively move forward. Yet, of course, extreme or chronic anger can be detrimental to our well-being. So anger is not just an aggressive reaction. What happens when you get angry? Yeah, what happens when you
You
get
could feel really hot.
You feel hot? Yeah. Yeah. What else? I see Ryan. Sophia?
You want to punch something?
You want to punch something. And that's where anger gets to be too much, right? Right? So we don't want to get to that level of anger. How do you feel when you're angry? Sasha?
You sometimes feel sad while you're angry.
Sometimes you feel sad when you're angry. Ryan?
Oh, you can feel stressed out.
Feel stressed out, yes. So anger doesn't have to always be an aggressive reaction. And it can provide us with information that allows us to better engage with the world and with ourselves. So some of the things that anger can help us with is it might motivate us to solve a problem. Have you ever been angry at something, and because you were angry at it, you persisted and figured out how to solve that problem?
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of that? Or just that it happened? Yeah. Yeah.
At recess, we made a snow floor and somebody kicked it down, and we were so angry that we tried to find out who did it.
You tried to find out who did it. Did you go ahead and rebuild the snow fort? So maybe in that anger, you persisted and said, well, I'm just going to build that fort again. We're going to keep it going. Yes, Ryan.
I was writing a script and I redid it because I was getting stuck. So I was so angry I was getting stuck, I just redid the whole thing.
And did it come out better because you redid it?
I believe so.
All right, so Ryan, he was angry at himself because he had problems writing a script, and he rewrote it. He got so angry he just trashed it and started over and came out with something better. Anger also helps us become aware of injustice. Can you think of times where you might have seen something that was unfair and it made you mad or angry? And it might be not necessarily that it was unfair to you, but it was unfair to someone else, and it made you angry. Ryan?
The George Floyd incident.
The George Floyd incident. Did that make any of you angry? What did you do? Is there you don't have to say it out loud, but think about, what did you do? Is there something that you did because you're angry about that situation? Did you protest? Did you write an article to the paper? Did you donate money to certain organizations? So that anger helps us when we see times of injustice. And it can drive us towards our goals. Ryan needed to finish his script, and that anger took him and made him persist and move on. Do you think maybe a little bit of anger can actually make you more optimistic? Giving you more hope? Can you think of times where you're angry, and because of that anger you saw that something good can come out of it and something good can happen? Yeah, sometimes that's there. And you know what? Anger also protects our values and our beliefs. Because if we have certain values and certain beliefs, we tend to be angry when we see those things being mistreated. When our values are not in harmony, we might feel anger. Can any of you think of times where anger helped a situation instead of made it worse? Sometimes it makes it worse. A lot of times it makes it worse. That's because anger got to be too strong. But if anger is at the right level, it can help the situation. Can you think of times where anger helped? Anybody out there can think of a time where anger helped? You can share, I'll repeat. As a motivator, it helps you figure out how to solve the problem and to solve it, to keep on going, to not just give up. So anger is like fire. It's a primal force, and when left unchecked, it can be destructive. Yet when managed and used wisely, it can be a beneficial and powerful instrument that leads to enlightenment. Let's sing to the children as they go to the religious education classes.
Giving of our treasure is how we reciprocate the many gifts we are given by this community. Your contribution supports the programs and operations of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. Giving is also how we live our values in the world. Each month, we share our offerings with an organization nominated by the congregation and selected by the special offering team. In February, our special collection will benefit the Tom Galloway Scholarship Fund at College of DuPage. Tom Galloway was the first African-American president of DUUC. This scholarship supports African-American students at the College of DuPage. The DUUC Special Collection pays about a third of the annual tuition for a scholarship recipient and can also be used to obtain access to computers, purchase textbooks, or help with living expenses. DUUC has been supporting this cause for over 20 years. This offering is given and received in a spirit of generosity and gratitude.
Soy agua, playa, cielo, casa, planta. Soy mar Atlántico, viento y América. Soy un montón de cosas santas, mezcladas con cosas humanas. ¿Cómo te explico? Cosas mundanas. Fui niño, cuna, teta, techo, manta. Más miedo, cuco, grito, llanto, raza. Después mezclaron las palabras o se escapaban las miradas. Algo pasó, no entendí nada. Vamos, decime, contame todo lo que a vos te está pasando ahora, porque si no, cuando está el alma sola llora. Hay que sacarlo todo afuera, como en la primavera. Nadie quiere que adentro algo se muera. Hablar mirándose a los ojos, sacar lo que se puede afuera, para que adentro nazcan cosas nuevas, 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 nuevas. Soy pan, soy paz, soy más, soy el que está por acá. No quiero más de lo que me puedas dar. Hoy se te da, hoy se te quita. Igual que con la margarita, igual al mar, igual la vida, la vida, la vida, la vida. Vamos, decime, contame todo lo que a vos te está pasando ahora, porque si no, cuando está el alma sola llora. Hay que sacarlo todo afuera, como en la primavera. Nadie quiere que adentro algo se muera. Hablar mirándole a los ojos, sacar lo que se pueda afuera, para que adentro nazcan cosas nuevas, 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 nuevas.
Our reading today is a poem by Lynn Unger. Breathe, said the wind. How can I breathe at a time like this when the air is full of smoke, of burning tires, burning lives? Just breathe, the wind said. Easy for you to say if the weight of injustice is not wrapped around your throat, cutting off all air. I need you to breathe. I need you to breathe. Don't tell me to be calm when there are so many reasons to be angry, so much cause for despair. I didn't say be calm, said the wind. I said to breathe. We're going to need a lot of air to make this hurricane together.
Please rise as you're willing and able and join in hymn number 1015, I Know I Can.
A few years ago, I read the book Love and Rage, The Path of Liberation Through Anger by Lama Rod Owens. The title had popped out at me when a friend recommended the book. After all, who puts love and rage in a sentence together? And how on earth can we find liberation through anger? Well, a title that compelling meant I just had to read the book. As a child, I lived in anger. It filled my small body from top to bottom. A title like Love and Rage felt like it might have an answer for all that anger my small being had held. For all the many ways I lashed out at the adults in my life. Lama Owens' thesis statement in the book is that anger comes from hurt, either unhealed hurt or the fear that hurt will happen again. If we add love to this equation, we see that love lets us heal from anger, but it can also cause hurt as well, for when we love, we are vulnerable. When I think back on my childhood, this rings true. I was so very, very angry, and I was so very, very hurt. Anger was a way for me to express my hurt and also allowed me to protect myself from further harm, or at least that's what it felt like. When I reached my early 20s, there was a reckoning that needed to happen with that anger. It had begun to threaten my emotional well-being. I can honestly say I did not handle the conversations I had with family members at that point in my life very well. I had 2 decades worth of anger and hurt. And that anger had begun to turn to rage. As a victim of trauma and abuse, the anger was justified. But the thing about anger is there's no possible way to control it. Lama Rod Owens speaks about anger as if you're trying to hit a target with a ball. But first someone makes you dizzy, puts you on a merry-go-round, and now you're taking aim at a target with your anger, and you may get lucky and hit the target, but more likely than not, you won't. That was my experience. The target I needed to aim for was really the family systems, the pain that I was holding, and instead I metaphorically hit other people. People who, while they needed boundaries and truth, did not need the added hurt that I threw at them. Now I know I'm not alone in this. While this situation, my situation, might be different from yours, we all get angry. And most of the time, the methods to get rid of our anger are unhelpful. I remember as a child, someone told me to count to 10 every time I got angry. Yeah, you know. I don't know about you, but for me, this actually made me more angry. I'd sit there and I'd let it build and build and build rather than calm myself down. Because counting to 10 never actually addressed the roots, the deeper problem, the hurt. Added to the complexity of anger is that only certain people are actually allowed to be angry. Disclaimer, I'm about to speak in really broad, generalized terms about who can and cannot be angry, not about individual people. I'm living proof that it's not okay for a child to be angry. It's also not acceptable for women to be angry, or people of color to be angry. All of these groups are marginalized in our society, and for them to be angry means they are not submissive to the larger patriarchal system of supremacy. Women are hysterical when they are angry. People of color, especially male-identifying people of color, are threatening. And children are seen as dysfunctional. And if we dive even deeper in the realm of anger, we know that white men escape these stigmas. Anger is one of the only emotions that men are allowed to show. The rage of the mass shooters involved in mass shootings shows us this. What racial and gender identity is arrested versus killed in these fits of rage? White men. And their reasons for shootings are explained, rationalized, reasoned, or justified. But that does not mean that white men with rage go free without consequence. While the repercussions are often not public, that simmering rage runs deep into a body. It feeds off a soul, and it takes its toll on the emotional and physical health of white men. That rage, when left unaddressed, is more often likely to turn to violence. And even more so, it plays into the harmful stereotypes of what it means to be male. That to be male means you are emotionless and strong, further alienating white men from community and their deeper selves. Whether we are allowed to be angry because of our identity, or we're not because of our identity, anger holds power over us. Lama Owens uses another example when he writes, "Anger is like jumping out of a burning room with no space to think of where you might land. And maybe the room is on the ground floor and you jump out onto land. Maybe the room is several stories up and you jump out. Maybe you land and you don't get hurt too badly. Or maybe you jump out, and like in a movie, you jump into a pile of water or hay. Or maybe you jump out with no way to break your fall and you end up hurting yourself. When we are just reacting to anger, we have no idea if this reactivity will be harmful or beneficial to ourselves or to others. Whether jumping from a burning room or getting dizzy while shooting a ball, anger owns us. When we let it own us, it owns our flourishing as well. Now, this is not to say that anger is inherently wrong. In fact, anger actually tells us that something is wrong. I think of our 7 principles rooted in love, love as flourishing. Anger, when our principles are violated, tells us that injustice is happening, that hurt might be experienced by someone. We need to understand anger better so it doesn't own us. So to better understand our reaction to anger, we need to recognize that anger is not found in the mind, but in the body. Here is where we need to delve into our physiological response to anger. The idea of counting to 10 to settle ourselves down doesn't work because it's not in our heads, it's in our bodies. So we need something that is going to root our bodies. Better Health describes our physiological reaction to anger this way. Anger triggers the body's fight or flight response. Other emotions that trigger this response include fear, excitement, and anxiety. The adrenal glands flood the body with stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. The brain shunts blood away from the gut towards the muscles in preparation for physical exertion. Heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration increase. The body temperature rises, you get hot, and the skin perspires. The mind is sharpened and focused. With our minds hyper-focused on the threat, we can no longer think logically, especially now that our body is pumping full of adrenaline. It's not possible to count to 10 in our mind because our mind can't be distracted. It's hyper-focused. What needs to happen is a counter to the physiological response. We need to breathe. When a body is preparing for a burst of energy, breathing allows us to become open. By breathing, we are flooding the body with oxygen, which forces everything to open up and loosen as it stretches to accommodate the lungs' deep breath and the flood of air. This includes the brain, which rather than honing in on what it is hyper-focused on, becomes spacious, so that anger is no longer something it entertains in the same manner. Most importantly here, the act of breathing is an act of self-love. It tells us that I am more important than the threat, and the people around me are more important than the reaction to the threat, the hurt. When we love ourselves enough to breathe, we give anger a spaciousness that becomes a tool we can harness as we fight for our flourishing, rather than making it an agent for destruction against ourselves and the world we love. But breathing has another benefit, one that I've spoken about before during candidating week last spring. Breathing, when done with others, such as our community here, is called conspiring. If we breathe together, giving anger spaciousness, it allows us to conspire towards justice, reveling in the righteous anger that comes from a people, our DUUC people, who are unwilling to let hurt and harm have the final say in our world. In my 20s, when I succumbed to my anger, letting it rage, flare, it grew. I can't remember exactly when, but at some point I breathed. And the spaciousness that I gave my anger allowed me to see the bigger picture, the larger truth. So many people, so many systems during my childhood were broken. I was not the only one hurting. I had every right to be angry at a people that had failed me, and yet simply being angry would not make up for the hurt and harm. I needed tools that would stop the harm and the hurt and most importantly, not allow the patterns or behaviors to continue or to happen again. In that clarity of spaciousness, I was able to harness my anger by creating healthy boundaries, owning my truth, healing my hurt, and honoring the dignity of others, including those who had harmed me, while holding them accountable. This world is hurting, and it is angry. We saw this last week on the campus of Michigan State University. The site of mass shooting number 71 in this year, a year that is less than 2 months old. The hurt, the harm, the helplessness riles my anger. Maybe it riles yours too. The uselessness of prayers and thoughts make me livid in light of politicians' unwillingness to be unpopular in making sensible gun control laws. I am angry. And I'm breathing. I am breathing with Unitarian Universalists, with this community, that we might conspire to use our rage to burn out hate and hurt and replace it with the flourishing of love. When we root ourselves in love of others, of ourselves, of creation, our love for humanity, breathing together, we turn that anger into righteous anger, which makes transformation toward justice possible. May we breathe together.
Please rise and join in hymn number 27, I Am That Great and Fiery Force.
Our benediction is by Stephen Scheck. But what is to be done with it, this anger that dare not be swallowed? Should it be diluted with denial, cooled with indifference? Should it be sweetened with good intentions, softened with lies? Should it be spewed out over red-hot coals, scorching the guilty and innocent alike? What's to be done with this anger that dared not be swallowed? Don't dilute it, deny it, or cool it. But pause for a moment. Could you hold it before your eyes, examine it with your heart and mind? Could you hold it, then touch it to your belly, that place where your soul rests? Could you let it enter there, knowing it is a part of you that needs to be treated kindly, that needs to be listened to, that needs to be honored? For it has the power to save you, to save us all.
We extinguish the light of this chalice, but not the light in our hearts. Until we meet again, may the warmth of our community carry you.